Good time of day to all of you, my friends here on the Internet Chess Club. Well, sorry about the late start. Part of that was on my end, because something changed there on YouTube, and I wasn't sure that I was actually streaming, but well, now it looks like I am streaming. So, well, okay, I'll try to make it up for you by making an interesting show. Glad to have all of you here, and so here it is. US. Good time of day to all of you, my friends here on the internet. US Chess Championships 2019, they're in the books. Okay, I need to show you the final standings, of course, the cross table. So bear with me. I'll do that very real quick. Okay, so Hikaru Nakamura wins the men's championship. That, I believe, is Hikaru's 5th title, considering how young he still is. No, he's only 31, right? Going on 32. He's certainly gonna equal and probably best the modern record of Walter Brown. Walter had 6 US championship titles, to his credit. Well, Hikaru did it by his usual combination of solid play and grit when it really came down to it. Well, his last round game was absolutely remarkable, that win against Jeffrey Shang with the black pieces. I will remind you that coming into the last round, there was a 3-way tie between Nakamura, Caruana, and Dominguez. And since they already played each other, well, the possibility of yet another playoff was looming large. I'm honestly very happy, and I'm not only just happy for Hikaru, I'm happy that we didn't have a playoff. I'm really a bit tired, of watching every major tournament to be decided in some kind of a rapid or more often blitz session. Well, I understand it's a sign of the times and all that, but I still simply cannot embrace it. And yeah, well, but Hikaru did it. All the same, on the women's side of this thing, well, we had even clearer winner, if you allow me this expression. The 17-year-old Jennifer Yu cut through the field like a hot knife through butter. So her final score is 10 out of 11, which, actually made me think that the long advertised idea of, not idea, but it's in the regulations, of a Fisher prize of $64,000 to a person who has perfect score. They call it a Fisher prize because Fisher won one of the US championship with perfect score. Well, that wasn't really that far from reality in this case. Though Jennifer made a couple of draws sometime in the middle of the tournament, but nonetheless, 10 out of 11. Her performance is 26.78. Alright, so talking about exceeding her expectations by all 400 points. Well, yeah. I don't think he had a chance at 11 out of 11, in the sense that he made her draw, I believe in round 4. She played Annie Wang. And then maybe a couple of rounds later, she made another draw with Tatev Abrahamian. Now, 11 out of 11 almost no matter, how well you play and how poorly the rest of the field plays, it's still, I don't know. It shouldn't be happening, put it this way. I think Jennifer's happy with her result, well, who wouldn't be? And she's now in this situation when, okay, where do you go from here? I mean, I would like to start our conversation with that. All right, what should Jennifer Yu do now? Should she just forego chess and go to college? Well, as I think she hinted that that's what her parents want her to do. And there is a lot of talk about Chinese American parents being so driven, that they demand education from their children and all that. I really don't know. I mean, I suppose, but I mean, she's 17 years old. She can probably, in some sense, decide by herself, or at least try to talk to her parents. Maybe she has some other plans. I would love to see Jennifer devoting a year or two to chess competition, and maybe going to Europe and playing a series of tournaments. Well, I think for sure, she plays like a 2400 player. And with some experience, I think she could become one of the best female players in the world. Now, where is our Sanford Fellowship? Traditionally, it was always awarded to men, boys, young men. I think it's time to give it to Jennifer, really. I mean, if it's possible, then she gets some support, and at least like for a couple of years. Well, I mean, college is not going anywhere, right? Well, that's what just I hope for. But of course, I have no way of knowing if it will happen or not, and no way to influence this. Gap year, yeah. Well, the Sanford Fellowship is given for 2 years. I think it will. No, actually, I haven't heard about it for quite some time. So maybe that fellowship is not awarded anymore. Anybody here knows? I wish I could ask Joel Benjamin. For sure he would have the answer to this. Joel was the recipient of the initial award, Sanford Fellowship. So the tradition has been going on for quite some time, and I think it helped a lot of American young players to gain their footing in the chess world. And now I think Jennifer should win the next one, hands down, my opinion. There is no money in women's chess. Well, in what way? Now, we're talking the United States? Yes, indeed. Well, American Swiss tournaments that are run mainly by Bill Goichberg, but also by some other organizers, traditionally do not offer women's prizes. Now, the talk was that it's discriminatory and whatever, and women are good enough to or whatever, yada yada. Now, well, I think the effect was quite opposite. Instead of attracting women to chess, it kind of turned them away from this. I can speak from experience of my wife, Kamila Baginskaite, who was a US champion and was one of the best players in the country for almost 2 decades. And yet, she saw no opportunity to advance her chess in the United States, and therefore, it didn't happen. How much money did Huifan make a year? I have absolutely no idea about it. No, she certainly now she's in college, right? So she's in Oxford, not just college. Well, I don't know what her situation is, but who is a different story, right? So she's Chinese. She played for China, and the Chinese Chess Association has their own arrangements with their players. And I guess they pay for travel, all expenses, coaching, and whatnot, in return of a certain percentage of prize money won. And, I don't really know the nitty-gritty about all that stuff, but okay, this is how it was. Who is probably not a very good example of this? Well, so returning to this, if you look at tournaments, women's chess in general now in Europe, they actually have plenty of tournaments. And I think there is quite a few full-time chess professionals among women. Well, they're obviously very good players, but I think Jennifer could become as good as them. I mean, I'll pay no attention to her current rating of 2273. Oh, this is basically an outcome of her not traveling and only playing in the United States, because it's very difficult to gain rating in our Swisses. A lot of American players are underrated. A lot. It's always been like this. It probably still is. I mean, honestly, even speaking for myself, although I'm not a good example because I'm just old, but I don't know. I think if I lived in Europe, there is no way, my rating would be 2500. Well, I know my chess. No, it says about 100 rating points. Well, the girls who play in the European Opens, not just in the large ones like the Gibraltar Open that actually offers pretty good women's prizes, but in general play over there, they quite easily maintain that 2400 is really nothing. The better of them, they in 2500 and 2550. Now, if you ask me if Jennifer is already that good to be a 2550 player and compete on equal terms with the Muzachuk sisters and like Tan Junyi and other Chinese girls and the Russian girls, no, she's probably not, but she could grow if given an opportunity. Now, as far as using the 25 grand, that she won here to go to college, okay, that's very nice. It's the family business. I have no way to interfere in that. But in some ways, I look at the comprehensive prizes offered in the U.S. Women's Championships already, not just this year, for quite a few years. No, it seems like that. I mean, they're so outrageously large compared, with what can be won by a player of this level, like Jennifer Yu, in outside of the U.S. Championship, that it simply can be viewed in some ways as a handout. Like, okay, we have this great guy, Rex Singfield, who single-handedly, just rescues, American chess. In some ways, it also pertains to the men's championship. I mean, our prize money and structure of prizes in the United States, in our large opens, World Open, the US Open and such, did not change at all in the past 25 years. Okay, it's a little tiresome. Okay, I'll show you games, of course. How long you have played chess? No, I think, she started quite young. No, she's 17 now, but this is certainly not her first US championship. She played before. She probably distinguished herself in scholastic chess. Now, look, about making more money in a professional field, this is really a silly talk. Okay, well, I'm sorry but we need to round this up. This is a silly talk. The different fields of human endeavor, they offer different compensation. Well, I don't know, people do things, that they're destined to do. I mean, it's not just chess players. You can't just take, every musician, and just turn them into a banker. How many bankers do we need in this world? Well, if she can make more money doing whatever, I could make more money selling drugs. Okay, yet, I'm here talking to you. Okay, now, let me try to set up our board so we can get some games going. All right. I want to start with the last round because that last round, they kind of saved the championship for me, really. Well, I'm talking about the men's event. At some moment, it was sometime in the second half of the tournament, I was asked to write a report for ChessBase, and I think it was round 8. Anyway, and the report which is in written form, right? So I wasn't, no, it wasn't a video. Came out a bit bitter, maybe in some ways, because I really lamented the kind of the lack of push from the lower rated players in the tournament, and I felt, that the favorites, they had it a little bit too easy in the tournament. So it's almost like they were not challenged, and they would sit there. Eventually, they would win a game or two, get to a plus score, and then sort of sort things out between themselves. Okay, well, obviously it did not completely change. If you look at the cross table, then the three players who are on the top, they didn't suffer a loss. Nakamura, Caruana, and Dominguez. They not only that, they didn't have a suspicious position among three of them throughout the whole event. Wesley So was like that until the last round. So, okay, we'll talk about this, but first, of course, let's look at this great game. So, as I said, so three-man race, and they all had different opponents. Well, smart money kind of was on Dominguez because he had the white pieces against the tail-ender Timur Gareev, who was an eccentric individual, and it was hard to tell what to expect from him. It turned out, that Gareev put his best effort forward to play the role of a spoiler. And ultimately, Dominguez will get to this game. Ultimately, Dominguez was not able to win. Caruana's task, on the other hand, seemed the hardest because he had black pieces against Sam Shankman. Sam, was no longer a defending champion at that moment. Lost even theoretical chances of retaining his title. But Sam is a chess professional in the sense that he's not going to give away his rating he worked so hard to get, his 2700 something. And even if the tournament didn't go well for Shankman, he fought in every game and played in a very steady manner, so it didn't seem like that he would take a whole lot of chances with white against Caruana. And indeed, so that game I'm not even going to bother to show you. There was really not much action there. Well, Caruana, okay, you can say that why didn't Caruana play like Nakamura? Well, at least the choice of the opening. Well, players are different. For Nakamura to play that Dutch defense, it's not the first time he does it. He did it before and more than once, the Leningrad variation, against strong players, and not necessarily in a situation when it was do or die, must win. A comment about Sam Sevian, that is true. Sam was, in my opinion, the only player who really distinguished himself among the all-Sarans, if I could use this somewhat derogatory term to describe players outside of top 4. Or in this case, I talk about Shankman, so top 5. And so out of the 7 remaining players, Sevian impressed me the most. Alright, so now, Nakamura is playing against Jeffrey Chang. Jeffrey Chang had a great start in the tournament. I will remind you that he was leading the tournament with 2.5 out of 3. However, for the remainder of the tournament, Jeffrey was not able to win a single game. And he actually, after this loss, ended up in the bottom half of the tournament table with only 5 points. Now, a lot has been said about Jeffrey being the next big thing in American chess. And indeed, like this, he showed great promise, and some 3 or 4 years ago, I was almost convinced that it's only a matter of time before Jeffrey gains a 2700 rating and then takes it from there. Well, however, he's not the first player who kind of hit some rough spot, rough patch, after seemingly gaining rating and improving seamlessly throughout his junior years. It happens often, and it has something to do with the way players like Jeffrey improve. So I was never really involved in his chess career. Well, I know he has his coaches, but I never coached him. And matter of fact, I never even talked to him. But kind of following his games and games of other players that followed about the same curve, I noticed that Jeffrey kind of gained the rating very fast, and was moving up, mainly because he had a very narrow and opening repertoire, and he was just simply able to take advantage of their opponents not being as good as he is. Now, it has a downside. Well, a player that self-restricts the range of positions that he's playing because he's so result-oriented, eventually it's gonna come to the point when the competition is tough, right? And you can't simply, outplay them or take advantage of their mistakes. Then you need to have something extra, particularly with the white pieces. And this is where Jeffrey struggles now. I mean, the years of playing the London system, they finally caught up with him. Now, and this game is a prime example, and Nakamura's choice of the Leningrad Dutch was excellent. It's not like Jeffrey never faced it. He probably had. But that particular line that Hikaru chose to play knight c6 here on move 7, instead of the usual c6, which Hikaru himself played very many times. And I'm sure Jeffrey was prepared, or at least better prepared to face it. Or a similar line with queen e8, which often transposes to c6. But the knight c6 line, okay. Why is superior player using a dodgy opening? No, well, yeah, dodgy can be applied to this. No, well, it's the tournament situation. Hikaru felt that he had to win. And I really admire this, because knowing Hikaru's skills in Rapid and Blitz, one would think, oh, well, Hikaru wouldn't mind a two-way tie or whatever, no, three-way tie, say they all make draws, and then he'll deal with these people. No, well, Hikaru didn't want that. I actually know privately that he said before the game that he's going all in. And which is a very courageous decision. Now, he said that Shang is uncomfortable in Dutch structures. No, Dutch structures are different, and the Leningrad Dutch is way different from the Stonewall. And but I think the critical moment came maybe at this position, or maybe move or two later. Okay, so here is the thing, right? What is knight c6 about? It's to play e5, right? Now, if white, say, plays some random move, whatnot, I don't know, rook b1, there, and there, and there, then we have a situation. The black is probably happy with what you've got. Compared with the King's Indian, his pawn is already on f5. In the King's Indian, he has to move the knight away, play f5, return with the knight. Okay, there could be a drawback to this if white manages to go knight g5, knight e6. I don't want to analyze the resulting variations, because rook b1 is kind of unusual move, and honestly it's not worth our time. But the point, I believe, should be taken, that black is just ahead of the schedule compared with the regular King's Indian. So, from that point of view, I mean, white has to react somehow, right, to the threat of e5. The move d5 that Jeffrey played is absolutely the most common move in this position. The pawn kind of cuts across between the e and the f pawns, right? So whenever the e pawn moves later on, white can take en passant, and black is not going to get that King's Indian, superior King's Indian structure. He will get, however, the structure typical for the Leningrad Dutch, which in itself is quite interesting and certainly playable for black. But here the question is that tempo. But before we move on, because this is where the game went, I also mentioned another move, knight d5, that has its points. Well, it's probably not as good as d5 theoretically speaking, but there would be the kind of move that would take the game maybe in a direction Nakamura did not expect. Now, right, I said direction, not necessarily move or particular line. I mean, it's pretty difficult to surprise Hikaru Nakamura in the opening. But since Black chooses the opening, and Jeffrey had no way of knowing it would be Leningrad Dacha, it would be one of the things for him to prepare for. But it could also be King's Indian or just some kind of regular opening that Hikaru plays. Queen's Gambit declined. Well, with possible draw in mind and then go into the playoff. Fine. But it already happened on the board now. You're Jeffrey. Okay, if you're a more experienced player in this situation, would think, okay, why is he doing this? Well, he had played it before, right? So he knows those structures. Perhaps I need to do something to avoid, to sidestep his preparation. Not even in the sense of particular moves, in the sense of getting the type of position he wanted. Well, you could also, with some risk, of course, come to a conclusion that indeed he's going for it. He played the Dutch, so he wants to beat me and grab the US Championship title. No, right. Well, what should I do in this situation? I should play against his intentions. Well, the value of moves that you have, the options, the theoretically known options, they're probably about the same. The ones that are, don't cut it chess-wise, they simply get eliminated from consideration. What's left is approximately, equally attractive options, or unattractive, I don't know, equal value options. Now, how to choose between them that's the secret. That's the difficulty. That's what Jeffrey needs to learn. Well, in danger of upsetting his supporters, I would say there is really nothing in Jeffrey Shank's chess that makes me to go, wow, this guy is going to be at 2800. It's not like, Jeffrey would play his own chess the way he plays it, and people would just fall one after another. No, he just doesn't have it. Well, who has it? No, maybe Magnus Carlsen had, but he's no Magnus. However, other people, including Hikaru Nakamura himself. Look at Hikaru, right? Hikaru always chooses his openings wisely. He always has some kind of a plan. Now, does it go right the way he expected every time? Probably not. But he's making that effort every time. It's essentially important for a player approaching 2700 is to have a wide opening repertoire and being able to make those choices for a particular game, directed against their opponent's intentions. No, it's not obvious to me that Black is worse. How is that obvious to you? Tell me. How can this be obvious to you after 7 moves? I mean, I absolutely disagree with that statement. Well, the Leningrad Dutch has been played by good players. And it will stay there long after we are gone. Okay, so he goes d5. Now, the move knight e5 in this position, which Hikaru played, I believe, when he was young, and some other players play. Indeed, it gives white a fairly easy game. All you need to do is just to take and play e4. And now, this double pawn on e5 does not provide a sufficient foundation for this aggressive play on the king side. It's simply too weak. So therefore, Black has to fall back on different plans, trying to attack the pawn on d5, somehow exchange the pawn, and basically he stands worse. But Hikaru goes there. Knight a5. Now we can tell that Jeffrey is surprised. Maybe he wasn't that surprised with the Dutch itself, but now he is surprised. How does he react to this? He falls back on a pattern familiar to him from a Yugoslav variation of the g3 King's Indian. Imagine the black pawn back on f7. Now this d5 and knight to e5. It's called the Yugoslav variation, and usually black has the pawn on a6 instead of the pawn on f5. And then they play c5, and then they play for a6, b5, and sometimes going into a Benoni with e6 and all that. It's very well known. It's been known for decades. I played it myself with black. Garry Kasparov played it more than once. No, pretty much every King's Indian player, I think, at one time or another, played the system against the g3 variation. Now, so Jeffrey decided to, maybe Jeffrey already had experience. I'm not sure. I think he likes to fianchetto his bishop. So his g3 King's Indian, he gets g3 King's Indians, and I'm sure some people went Yugoslav with the knight on a5. And he decided to treat this position exactly the same. Wrong, wrong, wrong. This is a different position. Now, the pawn on f5 already takes up some space here, makes it difficult for white to push e4. So white, I don't think white can be successful by just huddling over there on the queen side, preventing that counterplay, as it happened in the game. This and all these moves. Okay, forget about knight g5, it's inconsequential, really. This move doesn't do anything. Knight e6 is not really a threat, because the pawn on e6 will not impede the action of the black pieces in no way. It may even be considered a weakness. So the move knight g5 was played. I think, Jeffrey was looking at various ideas. Maybe he wanted to play e4. Maybe he wanted to provoke the weakening move h6, but no, none of the sort really happened in the game. But my point is that even aside of the move knight g5, he could have gone queen c2. And then whatever, rook b8, and black goes b5, and white can even go knight d2, right? As they play with the similar positions with the pawn on f7. But in that situation, it's not easy, but it's certainly possible for white to advance the e and the f pawns forward. Yeah, we go to knight e4 now. And there was another reason, I think, was to deploy b3. Maybe he expected this move, but well, Nakamura is not like that. I know Nakamura wants to win. It's an important game for him to win, but he's not gonna go for the crazy stuff like this, because he knows that it takes sustained effort, in a long game, and to win with black against a good player, as Jeffrey is. In this position, no, there is no kill. You take. Now this capture, the knight can come to d4. Forget it. So then this move is played. I believe the answer is we get the bishop over there. White will get some significant compensation for the exchange here. And I believe more than that. Now the knight on a5 obviously completely out of play. Now white is planning to attack with the move queen h4. Another threat, of course, is b4. It's coming from the other side. I mean, I'm thinking in this position, what do you do? I mean, if you take, you can't defend against mate with this because of the known trick, right? So the both knights are in precarious position, but that knight returns to e6, so therefore white will, for sure, will be ahead because he's up a pawn. Yeah, b4 is a threat as well, of course. So I'm not sure. I think knight e4 has been played, but No, this... I mean, b3 could not be an outright blunder. Well, if white was so concerned about it, no, he could start with knight d2 and then eventually play b3. But say after c5, queen c2, everything's safe. They would be the same position as we know from the King's Indian. But in my opinion, this whole thinking is fundamentally wrong. And here is what I think. Now, white has to make adjustments. Well, one adjustment he can make is to play the queen d3 line. I believe it's way superior than knight d2. And let me look at my notes. I had notes somewhere. Now, first of all, the bishop goes to d2. See that putting the bishop to oppose that bishop on g7 causes white more problems than brings them dividend. Because the unprotected bishop on b2 and then it comes under attack from the rook when the b5 was opened after inevitable a6 b5. And it's inferior to the protected bishop on g7, tactically speaking. Now that bishop aims at the knight. Now white's plan is to clear out long diagonal and make this, render this bishop, no, I don't know if useless would be the right word, you know, less powerful. Let's use it this way. And a6, b3, b5. All right, black can sacrifice a pawn. Obviously, no, there will be problems as the bishop comes out to a6. But white's strategy in yeah, but white can also accept this pawn because, well, what they need to do, they need to get the rook off. Now, if you take too soon, then you cannot grab the b file, right? Even later, you know, like even if you play this and suppose white, I don't know if they would do this, but okay, if white moved the knight away from c3, you can't even go rook b8, the queen is tied down to the knight. This knight can only be made good if something happens against c4. So probably black doesn't want to do this immediately, so they can play this. And now, funny, you know, I'm actually quoting one obscure game played by Nakamura with black pieces, where he ended up in trouble in this situation because white was able to push b4. It's similar to Benko Gambit, right? It looks very similar. But the move f5 now is... No, it's not really that useful. I mean, in some ways, you know, like you're horrified, you know, to see this weakening. Because the bishop is diverted elsewhere on e6. So the Benko scenario is not really good. The King's Indian scenario you can't get. So queen d3 is superior to b3 in my opinion. Although I may transpose. But the line I like the most, now I know that I took a lot of your time, but I think it's important to understand that because it's essential for the way the game went. The decision that Jeffrey made here, or rather he didn't make. He didn't think of this move. Now, if you go to the source, that was played by Paul Keres. Now, how come Keres played this move and took on c6 against Korchnoi, of all people? Probably 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Because Keres understood the fundamental difference between this structure with the pawn on f5 and the dragon kind of normal structure with the pawn on f7. Black is shaky in the center and white needs to open up the center for active play with c5 rather than try to maintain his positional advantage based on the pawn on d5 in a situation where black counters with the pawn on f5 and good control over the a4 square. Queen a4, in my opinion, is much stronger move than any other possibilities that white has. Change the course of the game, get Nakamura out of his game plan, make him play this position. I mean, he's good. I'm not saying that Nakamura would collapse. Well, but no, it's not exactly what he wanted. A slow developing game with potential to outplay your opponent. Here you have to be on lookout for tactics. White's main plan is to play c5. Now everything will be open. That and the pawn on e7 and some weakness even on the d file. Alright, well, obviously, well, if you had a chance to prepare, when you look up on databases and discover this idea queen a4, start looking at this and maybe you like it and then you play it. You play it when the game starts. The problem is that Jeffrey had no way of knowing there would be Leningrad Dutch, and particularly this rare line with knight c6, knight a5. Sacrificing, suicidal. I mean, look, any attempt, there to win the b2 pawn, well, here everything fails, I think. It's going to be white attacking the black king violently. It's going to be bishop h6 played, you can take the exchange. We already looked at some lines like this. Well, it seems like the Leningrad Dutch offers possibilities like this, but they usually don't work out very well, particularly with that knight also in a terrible position. I don't think so. Alright, so he went this way. Knight g5 and then he plays series of moves. Did put the queen on d3, but the bishop went wrong place on b2. So that the plan chosen by Jeffrey was just to play it the way white, similar to how white plays, with the pawn on f7 in the King's Indian, is to give good protection to the c4 pawn. And then black's play is gonna fizzle out. In some way, he accomplished just that. He played this nice move, hitting that knight, at the moment when the black queen already went away. And Hikaru went back, which normally with the pawn on f7 would be a huge victory for white. Because in a situation when c4 is not under pressure, this is where you advance and you go forward. But then comes this pawn on f5 that changes the whole thing, in my opinion. I don't see how white can get e4 in. Right away? Okay, perhaps we should look at this. Alright, the knight has to come to e6. Now we get to that, and he does what? He takes the pawn. Can we get this pawn back? We should try, right? But I mean, I don't like bishop takes f6. I would rather go knight c3 and try to win it this way. But is it possible or not? I don't know. This knight will make its return. Well, white needs to be, how to put it, sufficiently desperate to start calculating e4. So it's almost like, okay, if I don't get e4 now, then my game is going nowhere, so I must make it happen. Jeffrey didn't feel this way. Absolutely not. And I agree with him in the sense that indeed white doesn't have to do this. The problem is not that something's going to happen to him in the next few moves. Aside of the fact, that he'll find himself with no plan. And he went knight e3. Okay, what about this configuration? Trying to put the knight on f2 and then prepare e4. Could that work out? It's actually an interesting possibility. maybe f4. But he did this. Well, Hikaru found some use for that knight. He covered d6, so that no longer makes any sense to keep the knight on g5. But importantly, he didn't play h6, so there is no weakening to the black king side. Now this, and now the move before. Usually this move is a no-no in the Yugoslav variation, because black must get something going on the queen side. But here, white doesn't have advantage in the center, despite, having a superior pawn on d5. Somehow the black pieces, they flow around that pawn, and they find squares. So Hikaru takes an opportunity to make some gains on the queen side. Back and forth. Well, as much as I appreciate maneuvering chess, and I know that's the name of the game, we got Magnus Carlsen, but Magnus Carlsen usually maneuvers when he's already, the position is stabilized, and maybe he's somewhat better. Now, the maneuvering in a position that yet to take any shape indicates to me a lack of plan, a lack of planning. So the knight came to f4. Is that knight stable there? Probably not. g5 can be played. And then the next move, white plays this move h4, which seems like rather an innocent move, oh, knight on f4 complemented by the pawn on h4. It's routinely done. Well, it's routinely done as a defensive formation. Nimzovich, long time ago in my system, he said, this is how you stop the pawn majority. He was talking about the position with the black pawn on e4. So he put the knight over there, play h4. Maybe difficult for him to prepare g6 and all that. This is how it's not, maybe not even pawn majority in the sense that it's 4 against 3. The more advanced pawns. But, where's white's play? This whole thing from f2 to g4 doesn't lend hand to any active play. Any plans with f3 now create a horrible weakness on g3. And Hikaru just waits. He almost senses like the opponent is struggling and he's willing to take his time. Play some moves that generally improve his position. Well, he protected the pawn on d6. What if? I don't think he wanted to play e5 and open the d5 square for the white knights that both kind of in touch with the d5 square. But he moved the rook off that bishop diagonal just in case, or possibly to back it up with another major piece, maybe the other rook or the queen. The ball is in white's court, what to do? And now this. Honestly, I don't see much point in all this, because clearly white is not interested in playing e4 when he cannot recapture with the knight. Parting with the light square bishop, particularly if this pawn structure is full of holes and light squares, doesn't seem like a good option at all. Maybe it was part of some general relocation of the knight somewhere, or I hardly see the point in this. But Hikaru finally said enough is enough. I'm all set, I played all the moves I needed to play, and let me get on with my plans. And he played a great move, knight g4. Alright, so first thing we noticed at how awkward that bishop is, right? So the black knight can come to e5. For example, if you push forward, then I suppose they can take, and now play knight e5. The knight cannot be challenged. Usually white in all Benoni structures pushes that knight eventually from e5 by preparing f4, but now the f5 was overloaded, and the bishop is absolutely awkwardly placed. It's not good for white. So Jeffrey decides to part with it. Now, look at this pawn on g4. I recently did a little bit of study of the Dutch in the Stonewall thing, and using that book by Viktor Moskalenko. It came out maybe 10 years ago, revolutionize your chess. Had some good and bad parts in it, but the part on the where Moskalenko talks about Stonewall is excellent because he played it his whole career. And he shows a few examples of that f takes g4 and how effective that can be. Now this prime example of that. See, white can play e4. That's what he did. But notice this lack of connection between the f2 pawn and the e4 pawn. They don't go forward together. There is this hole over there. And black gets some play on the open f file. Endgame. Amazing, right? We talk about like black playing for a win, taking chances with the choice of a dodgy opening, as you guys put it. And yet, he offers a queen trade. No, in this situation, a queen trade benefits black for a number of reasons. Reason number one, it lessens the impact of white's breakthrough in the center with potential threats against the black king. Obviously, queen's gone, king's safer. It makes it more important that potential play on the queen side with the attack against the b3 pawn. And thirdly, it clears out for this. It's hard to believe that was that useless Yugoslav knight on a5 is gonna make such a career. But it will. Good move. But bishop f5. Obviously, Nakamura preserves the integrity of his pawn structure. Black is here, black's better already, and probably by a lot. The situation became rather critical a few moves later. Jeffrey was headed into mild time trouble, and he played, in this position, he played rook e7. I analyzed this with Grandmaster Melik Hachan. Melik said, you gotta do this, check. Okay, takes, take with the pawn. A knight appears over there, right? And then Hachan says, just go knight f4. He considers this knight as valuable as a white rook. Or if you look at this the other way around, he considers the white knight on f4 and the pawn on s6 sufficient compensation for this black rook. Yeah, you can do this. The attack on b3, no, white can deal with that by placing the rook over there. How's black gonna make any progress? By the way, this unit can move. Pawn forward, knight to d5. It seems to me that in this situation, black would have to relegate one of the rooks to defense. The other one can hit b3, but white protects it. I even suggested this. Now, e7 doesn't work, rook goes back and black is a pawn ahead. But after this capture, black has to go king f8 to blockade the passer. Now it seems like he's about to get to work, right? On numerous weaknesses. But white can play very energetically. And he should play energetically. If h5, he has to go f5. Get the king over there. I mean, I looked at this position. It doesn't seem like it's absolutely hopeless for white. Or the king's gonna do some damage. Obviously, black is gonna run the pawn to g2. Like in this continuation. But white is not down a pawn. And while the black king obviously is coming in to take the e6 pawn, then the white king can come back. So maybe best plan for black now is to abandon the g pawn and try to win the b pawn. But he still doesn't have two connected passers. So I'm not sure if... I mean, black's alright here, but I don't think he's winning. It's a long line. But at some moment you'd move 30 and no, basically spend the whole game moving your queen back and forth. You haven't done anything. At some moment you have to get things going. Well, you can't expect this to be great anymore because no, clearly White didn't have a very good opening. But he had to go 96. Now this move, I looked at the similar sacrifice to play this. It's less effective, I believe, because Black retains this knight. I looked at the streak, it's a nice streak, but the king comes to g7 and somehow in this situation, there's a number of ways of getting this exchange back. You can do this, and it goes rook a8. But now White has another problem which was overlooked. It's his king. Well, the knight coming to f3 will create some possibilities of mates. And it's supported by the pawn, which in turn can be supported with h5. And Black is more advanced over there. So when we talk about the annihilation of the pawns, and then you take d6, and then whatever, you win b3, and you lose b3, the Black passer is going to be much closer. And the Black king is obviously safe. You can give him a check or two, but certainly have no hope for any kind of mating net. The mating net is there for the White king. So White is worse in this line. Although maybe he should have gone for that. I think after rook b7, White is lost. Although it took a lot of effort from Nakamura to prove it, but he played a lot of excellent moves, and I don't think that Shan had any chance to recover. He put the rook on b7 because he thought the only thing that was threatening him was the attack against the b3 pawn. And he thought, I put the rook behind the future passer, and I can focus on attacking the Black king. It would have been good if it wasn't for this, which I'm sure he missed. No, sir, it's your king that's having a problem. Black is foregoing the attack on the b3 pawn, at least puts it off for a long time. He wants to trade a pair of rooks. Now, how's that essential? For a king like this, two rooks could be trouble, particularly if there is a knight or even two knights around. Now, the reduction of attacking potential for White will make any threats against the Black king obsolete. For that king, you don't need much. You need the knight on f3 and one rook, and you can already mate it. So, great plan from Nakamura. Now, this is championship play. Well, Jeffrey had to get his king out of the mating net, and he's bringing the king in the middle to help. But mate on a1 is a threat. Yeah, then the king will join in, so must take. And now king takes. Now you can see the king run. Watch the king run. Now, what can White do in this position? Now, the material, that pair of rooks and pair of knights, is known for great tactical potential. Well, you have to calculate on every move, because there are always surprising checks and forks and whatnot. But you still have to come up with some kind of a game plan. What's your game plan? Just to take the pawn on h7, hoping that you will win the pawn on g6 and make the h-pawn go. Well, the issue with that, of course, is the counterattack against your own king. So if you do this, then it comes here, and you do check, and it goes this way. And there is that mate. How do you stop it? Knight e6 check does nothing, the king is through to c3. Knight g2 is honestly unthinkable. You removed your active knight from attack on g6, and then your material gains over there are completely unimportant. Not to mention that Black can probably attack this knight that cannot go away and just take it and win the game. So rook takes h7 was not working, so he plays his king up to prevent the black king from going through. And incidentally, threatens to start some checks and drive the king away. Now, immediately Nakamura reacts. He pushes the white king away so that his king can enter through e4. That's the key. And here he played a remarkable move. I really thought that he's gonna just try to stretch the opponent's defenses by doing maybe this kind of stuff. But he didn't do it. I thought, maybe he felt that white could escape in the rook endgame with this. Black's probably better. Well, no matter what. But in order to prevent this line, he played a remarkable move. Now it's different in a sense that his rook is farther away from the white king. I wonder what exactly he had in mind here. I'm thinking. Well, there are some interesting possibilities, but I'm not quite sure how. But I think that was important. Maybe this was the important line. So the rook is not under attack. He gets to do this check. White doesn't want to give up the pawn with check, so he must do this. Now the attack comes against the knight again. And then the rook gets to come to d2. Something like this. Extremely deep, by the way. Anybody would play rook b1 here, but Hikaru played rook a1. It's very strong. Now knight e6. No, because otherwise the king comes to e4. So Jeffrey set up this defense. So he has this check, and he drives the king back eventually with these checks. However, that little pawn, which white never had a chance to take, now plays a very important role. It took away g5. So black is poised to go with the king forward. This. Now he went rook a3, king c2. It's fairly obvious that the b pawn would be a stronger passer than the d pawn because the black king is very close to the d pawn. Secondly, the c pawn would fall with check. So it seemed to me that so white had to protect. And now knight d3, much stronger than taking the pawn with the rook. The knight can take it with check, and the knight can also take the e4 square. There is a possibility to come to c3. The white king is confined to the back rank. It's a big disadvantage for white. Probably too much to overcome. Well, that's a threat, and rook d2 mate. Forced to play the move knight c7, which moves the knight away from the c5 pawn. It's amazing that through the rest of the game, white wasn't even able to make one step forward with the d pawn. Check again. And king d3. So the plan now is to play knight e4. It's amazing how that king and knight, they move about, clearing squares for one another. And now everything is forced. He threatens mate, only move. He takes the pawn with check. This probably wouldn't do because not just this there and Wait a minute. I'm kind of stuck here. You see, I cannot do that, what Hikaru does. I got it. On rook takes g4, there is king f3, and that wins. Or else, you know, I have knight d2, and then I go knight f3. Anyway, so he went the other way. Now this check. And great move, king e3. But on this, once again, the king comes over. Great example, attack on the endgame. So white moves the rook and willing to sacrifice the exchange, thinking I'll do things, you know, with the d pawn, or maybe I attack the c5 pawn, but you can't escape the corner, you get mated. The knight is useless. As it went down, everything came with checks, and Shan resigned. On king g4 it's g2, but if you go this way, then the cage closes again. Like this. Now, if there was ever a perfect game to win a championship title in the last round of all, that Hikaru just played it. Yeah. No, well, to me, this game alone, you know, redeemed the whole tournament, which otherwise was kind of predictable and honestly lacking for very exciting games. Now, right, so Hikaru won 4 games before that one, but he, as others, you know, mainly feasted on the tail enders. I mean, Akobian, Gareev, and completely out of form Robson. No, Hikaru played a courageous game to beat Ray Robson. He played the Dragon variation, which is not, no matter what kind of shape Ray is, he's a fearsome attacking player. And Hikaru took him down with his own counterattack. That was a brilliant game too. But aside of that, you know, the other wins were just steady, professional performance. The way he beat Sevian, got slightly better position out of the opening, and Sam, sort of self-destructed. Gareev, Akobian, similar wins. Now, okay, let's talk about Leang Dominguez. Obviously, his debut in the US Championship, and with many more championships to come. Finally, it seems like that he settled in his new homeland, like many of his fellow Cuban nationals have done in the past. Mostly baseball players, but no. Now we got a chess player. Well, Leang is what, about 35 years old, I would say. And how much does he have left in the tank? No, certainly enough to be a capable, serviceable player on the US Olympic team. As far as his own ambition, his lofty rating of 2739, but it has not been tested, in the past 2 years. There are a lot of new players that came around. I don't know if Leang is going to get any opportunity. No, he will play in the World Cup, I suppose. We will see. Now, for this tournament, Dominguez chose a safety-first strategy. He relied on his experience, and he made many choices that in the opening that were kind of restrained. Hang on. So let me show his game in the last round against Gareev. He almost won that game, right? Well, Leang had a lot of wins with black pieces, and often in games that didn't seem anything but winning for him. Like, they took advantage of Sevian's strange collapse in the drone rook endgame, and it took that half point. He also beat, I believe he beat Akobian with black. No, he didn't beat Akobian. He beat somebody else with... Oh, Robson he beat with black. Yeah, it seemed like nothing, but he played his openings he knows very well, and seemingly he didn't want to overextend himself. If it's a draw, it's a draw, you know, but no, things kind of went his way. So in the position to capture his US championship title in the first tournament. Now, Gareev, obviously, we all know about this guy. Rather eccentric bird he is, but no, can play any opening, and very moody character, so you don't know which Gareev is going to show up, you know. In my experience, once I won a game, well, he was really not against him. He was not into the game at all. So he was even absent from the board for a prolonged period of time. And I know Timur, he wasn't hiding in the toilet, checking with the analysis engine, you know. He was just probably talking to somebody or whatever. But when Timur puts his mind to it, he's still a capable player. And I mean, his rating 25.57, that means nothing, you know. Anybody who goes from one Swiss in the United States to another is going to struggle with the rating, particularly when you do it for many years. You can sustain it for a short period of time. And, no, well, still, for Sam Savian, who plays a lot of those tournaments, and he wins a lot of them, that's still that kind of a golden period that's not going to last very long. Sam knows that. He's a very intelligent guy. So Savian has to carve, you know, some kind of a niche for himself, you know, so he can play chess elsewhere rather than go year after year. Chicago, World Open, US Open, North American Open, because that's graveyard. Yeah, so Gareev goes into classical Sicilian, and I gotta tell you, F3 tells me a story of Dominguez's tournament. Well, Linier, well, he's the classic mode e4 player. He would always play bishop g5. But now, well, he wants to have a safe position, and he knows those structures very well. Actually I played them from both sides. Now, I don't want to debate the move orders here. Well, I tell you, once I myself played bishop takes d5. I know this is not what you're supposed to do. Besides, you're one move away from getting totally embarrassed in front of the whole chess world watching, but, well, as a matter of fact, nothing happens there. So, my opponent in that game played bishop g5, hoping maybe that I'll move the knight away, and then he plays bishop b5. I played my queen to d7, and he immediately took. Now, I won a very easy game here. Obviously, white's position is greatly compromised by the move f3. And this is the Sveshnikov structure with f5. There is no blockade on f5. The white knight is far away from action. No, bad line for white. Obviously, bishop takes f6 should never be played. But okay, anyway, Gareev goes more conventional. But he goes a5, a4, which is important. Now, I believe that for Timur, it kind of hurt me when I was watching people making these comments, you know, how can a guy like this be in the US championship? I mean, a guy like what? Oh, Gareev is quite a capable player. There were times, some 5 years ago, 6 years ago, he was number 3 rated in the United States, just behind Nakamura and Kamsky. Right now, yeah, no, you know, he's busy jumping out of airplanes and doing whatever. But to me, I'm looking at the field of players here. No, right, well, the youngsters, okay, 5 players I mentioned, in 2700. So can't argue with that. Nobody argues with 2700. But among the also runs, the 7 players, no, I would say that Savian, yeah, indeed, he's on the upswing. And obviously, I wonder, is a great talent, and no. Hopefully, I have time to show his game today. But we're going long today, by the way. But I mean, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily better than Gareev by so much. I wouldn't read, into a player, a former 2650, dropping 100 rating points. I dropped 150. No, but I mean, my situation is different. Obviously, I'm simply too old to compete. But Gareev is not that old. He's 31 and whatever. I won't be surprised. If suddenly he puts his mind together. Works on his game, which he could, and becomes a 2650 again. All the tools are there. No, obviously, this thing, with blindfold. Okay, I think he will cool off with that, So, no, he did it already. It's more like he likes challenges. The guy likes challenges. I mean, I can relate to this. But ultimately, no, it's just curiosity, blindfold chess. So I think Timur may come back and start taking classical chess more seriously. But he's off form, clearly. In this whole tournament, he struggled. And, well, he only won, a couple of games. No, it's not so bad, right? I managed to escape the silver in the end. But I expect to move knight d4 from Gareev. That's his style. We didn't play it. It's a typical interesting pawn sacrifice. Trying to take advantage of White's lag in development. Very sharp and interesting idea. Things may happen. Okay, anyway. Since he missed that opportunity, a good move from Dominguez. Well, the game went into this situation where it seemed like that both sides had something going for them. Particularly after the good move knight e6, offering the d-pawn, which of course Linear thought better of taking. Now this would be too dangerous to take on d6, allowing rook d8 and your king still uncastled. The black knight is coming to d4. No, Linear played safety first throughout the whole tournament, and I admire him for sticking to his tournament plan. There will be times for him later on, to take chances. Maybe he laments it now and thinks, well, don't know, if I just pushed it a little harder in one of my games, maybe I would have captured the championship. But he had no way of knowing how the tournament would go for him, because he had been inactive for over 2 years. Oh, it was a good plan. So trades, fine. And he actually understood one thing about this position, which appears to be approximately equal, because both sides, they occupy their squares without challenging the opponent's squares. But there is one difference, that the pawn structure can be challenged. And this move f4 hits the right note. Now, there is a possibility of all pawns in the center be exchanged. White, however, would still stand better, for 2 reasons. His supporting knight, because the pawns are gone, is defended by his pawn. Black's knight on e6, which supports the active knight on d4, is not defended by anything. And secondly, the white rook occupies more important file, closer to the kings. I looked at b5, but it would hardly make any difference. So I did this, some moves, tension is there, finally black has to resolve it. So Timur, who is already in big time trouble, less than 3 minutes to play the remaining moves. f5. Well, I don't know, maybe. Actually, I forgot to mention this. I also looked at f5. f5 was interesting. But once again, we're talking about a guy who hasn't played for 2 years. No, so he wants to create a situation on the board that he can handle. He's an experienced player. And here, well, good example. Like I mean, you wanna play knight f6 check. That looks crashing, right? You get the queen takes h6 and the pawn go into f7 and that knight hangs. But then we start looking, and I'm sure Dominguez looked. Nothing helps there. This loses to check, and then I get to take the knight on e6. Seemingly nothing to helps, but there is this. Check, king f8. He's hanging in there. Let's bring the knight in. Rook e5, and now knight g5. How is he gonna take? If he takes this way, we give check, and then we take, threatening g6. He takes, and we give that check. He goes back, and we give that, and we take on f7, and we win the queen endgame easily. It all looked so attractive. But then he thought better of it. You know why? And I think he was right. That exchange sacrifice and the knights and somewhat shaky position of the white king. I don't know, maybe white isn't better here. Stay with the game plan. And plays this. Also looks very strong. Threat of knight f6. The queen cannot go far away because needs to protect the knight. But then comes Gareev. Amazing tactical idea. I mean, all the good luck that Dominguez had throughout the tournament, all the openings that he knew very well, all the comfortable positions he was getting, everything went against him in this last game that he needed. Gareev, you know, the guy was just, basically everybody expected him to be dead last in the tournament, particularly after his start, and that story about him being late for his game that with Sevian, which by the way he barely saved, because he went to play a game in the or two he played in the Mid America tournament in the different part of St. Louis. I guess after losing his first two games, he just wanted to. That was his own way to deal with this. So he wanted to play. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it worked for him. So, no. Gareev came back, and even in this last round game, despite some mistakes that he made in the opening or maybe the middle game, he's fighting to the end, and he found this idea of a3. That's the only thing white can do. But surprisingly, the b pawn is so strong and he can't win it. I've seen similar endgames. Extra piece, right? It would be formidable attacking force, queen and knight. It would overwhelm defenses. But the knight, short range piece, and that the pawn on b2 just ties it down. And of course there are many checks. Anyway, so I'll skip through all this, you know. Trust me, while we talked about this, we couldn't find the win. One interesting line, what if a4? Yeah, bishop on b1 would win the game. I agree. Because the queen and bishop could work together for an attack. The knight's just simply too far away. Now, this line was not that effective because check. Let me scroll down. I had this. Oh yeah, I was starting with check on e3, pardon me. There, and check on e4. No, you want to try to avoid those. And basically, white's plan is to get the king over and grab the b pawn with the king, but really can't. Now comes this, and the second b pawn brings something new to the mix, and now with that queen c2 possibility, it's just simply perpetual check. There's nothing white can do at all. So the queen is tied down to the protection of the knight. Yeah, well, he had to take, and then the only plan left is to control this diagonal and try to bring the king over. Which he tried. Okay, after some dancing around, knight d2. So maybe with some luck, get the king over there, but... And then round up that pawn. Garev prevents it. And now there is this. And white gets to trade queens. However, everything was well calculated by Garev. I'm sure Dominguez saw that. It's just a knight, it can't really keep the h-pawn safe because it's gonna come under attack itself. Once again, if you had a bishop, okay, in this case a light square bishop would be useless, but a bishop can anchor with the pawn or maybe protect it from distance. The knight is always gonna be under attack. So the advantage of the king over knight in endgame. They say that king is worth 4 points. This is prime example. The black king just outplays the knight. Not allowing the white king to come in. And by that time, of course, Nakamura was already winning, so Dominguez had to accept the inevitable that he got the second and third joint with Caruana finish in the tournament, but yet good performance from Linier. Good for 28-10 performance, and good way to come back to tournament chess. We'll be watching Dominguez, how he does. And the game that really made this last round very special for me, obviously, Nakamura's win, I already spent 1 hour talking about it, but finally I got an upset win. That I was complaining. I said there's no... the high-rated players are not challenged. And then I got this game. The young Wonder Leang had black pieces against Wesley So. Now, with Wesley... Alright, so he had, 2 wins and no losses before that last round game. He was really not in contention for first place, right? Had a theoretical chance that all 3 of these guys lose, but that was not going to happen, forget it. So, once again, another performance that leaves a lot to be desired. Gone is that young, wide-eyed kid, who moved to the United States from Philippines and was winning every tournament, and then went all the way to world number 2 position and the Grand Chess Tour and all that. Great success, won a ton of money in the process. Now, it's all in the past. Right now we have, still young, but a chess professional that kind of knows his place and wants to keep his rating, to keep his invites. And, future. Wesley So game lost a lot of its colors. Honestly, he simply became a very boring player. And it's not just happened in this tournament. It's already been going on for a couple of years. Now, do I blame always the good intentions of someone else? Like Rex Singfield, his money creating this possibility for at least top chess players, maybe 3 or 4, whatever, in the United States. There was 3 now, maybe with Dominguez it's 4, to earn decent money and guaranteed money. All these events, this with big names like Showdown and Challenge this, it's basically guaranteed money for a couple of days playing Rapid and Blitz. On the one hand, it's a welcome thing. For somebody like Hikaru, I don't want to get into Hikaru's head, I can't, I'm sure there is still some ambition left. even if he doesn't want to talk about it and says, oh, well, I'll hang in there for another 5 years and then I'll retire, and I'll do my stock market full time. Maybe. I don't know. But I still believe there is ambition there. What I'm thinking is, still, Hikaru, even if it happens this way, and Hikaru simply quits on this world championship things and says, whatever, I've done what I could, it's just not for me. Can we blame him for that? Of course not. You have to be realistic, no, it's pretty hard, to make a push when you're already over 30. No, and you haven't been able to prove your advantage over some games, and most of them are younger than you, including world champion Magnus Carlsen. And now there are some youngsters coming up, Duda and Artemiev and whatnot, how many of them. And you say, okay, I'll play my invitational tournaments for guaranteed money and all that, He still loves the game, Now I'm talking, and maybe Nakamura is playing Blitz online. What do I know, on some other server. But for Wesley, so it's not an option, really. Wesley hasn't done, nearly as much as Nakamura did. He can't really hang it, right? That would be a travesty. Okay, anyway, in this game, last round game, he played for Pride, right? And, so he chose this opening while trying to get a game against a youngster. I wonder, it's sort of a mystery to me. Well, obviously I've seen this kid many times already. I don't think I played him yet, but I mean, it used to be this. Is somebody calling me? Why? Oh, there was somebody else. Yeah, I just left my Skype open, to talk to Leon, and, well, phone calls immediately came. Anyway, so I wonder, it seemed to be this stubborn kid, almost like Kamsky type, who sat there, defied all the odds, and all these doubters, this kid that is not learning proper chess. He plays whatever, he's just lucky or whatnot, I mean, and he handled it very well. Now there is no doubt about that. I wonder if Leang is for real. 2590. And, I don't know, him and another player that wasn't Rufeng Li, they remain a bit of mystery. I mean, I don't know what to make of them and how far they're gonna go. We will see, but at least this championship was very encouraging for Avonder's fans. He stood his ground, and what he did in this game was truly remarkable. So, it goes to Queen e7. Now this line is known, it's like Rasalima reversed, and Black wants to play d5. Get to open Sicilian, where he gains more time on the white queen, and Kasparov had some nice games. Usually white plays a3 to take care of the b4 square. Wesley played d4. I was honestly surprised. And I thought, what kind of move is this? Can't just plug go knight e4 and then give that queen b4 check? Is everything gonna be traded or capture on d4? What is white doing here? I mean, I don't know what to make of the move d4. It's entirely possible that Wesley simply messed up the move order, and maybe he wanted to play b3, d5, d4, as was once played by Caruana, or better yet, play a3, d5, d4, which has been played very many times. Oh, Sanfords are there. Sanford 18 shared between Leang and Sevian. Well, they're not shared, right? That's Sanford 17. They award it every year, but it's overlap, right? They never change the system. So a player who gets it in 16 uses it for 16 and 17. And then Liang and maybe got it in 17 and Sevian in 18 or the other way around. No, okay, fine, one of them is coming off. Which one of them, I don't know, Avanda or Sam, but that's it. They're coming off and, okay, make room for Jennifer Yu. So anyway, but remarkably so, E4 was the answer. So Leang, wants to close the position and he wants a full-fledged fight. Objectively, knight e4 was a better move, but now it went into this kind of a French where a black is missing the dark square bishop, but has a great development. White played all the moves with the knight only to trade it. I believe black's fine here. And, some moves, I always noticed, watching Liang's games, that his moves are sometimes hard to guess. But he always has something behind them. Have his own vision of chess, his own ideas. Reminds me of young Gata Kamsky. I was there, people like, oh, look at this kid, he's defending that lost position. He's just too stupid to understand how lost he is. Yeah, well, in the end, check the results in the tournament table. Who's stupid now? I don't know about short castle. Well, I'm sure Wesley knew the risk associated with that, but he wanted to move the f-pawn forward, and no, he did. Particularly after this, when he realized he's not opening anything up on the queen side. So he played b5, and a couple of moves later, f4. Capture. No, this battle of the two knights against two bishops in the position with pawn structure yet to be determined is one of the most fascinating scenarios, developments in the middle game. I recall that game between Laskar and Chigorin a long time ago. Here, of course, the both kings, maybe the black king is open, but no, the knights, well, they're very close to the king side, and they're very tactical pieces, so maybe they can shift the advantage toward black in such situations. I mean, a remarkable decision by Wesley. Oh no, Jeffrey Shong won in 2017. I'm confused, I don't know. Well, anyway, this guy's fine, like, right now, I mean, to me it's Jennifer Yu. No matter. I know people need support, I understand that. Although I kind of always questioned, I think in the past, they wouldn't give it to a high school age, figuring that you have to be young, but adult already. Because otherwise, what, you basically give money to the parents, right? They're supposed to pay for everything, but maybe it changed. Well, I don't know. On the other hand, wait until a promising kid turns 17 or graduates high school. By that time, they'll be overtaken by their competition from India, China, Russia, wherever. Yeah, Caden was there. Yeah, look at Caden's situation, right? You're probably wondering, where's Caden? He's not in the United States. He's doing some missionary work. All right. I mean, it's always hit and miss. In the past too, well, some recipients of the Sanford Fellowship, they didn't exactly use the money for, to facilitate their chess development. I mean, there are other things come in, and basically, I mean, unless you want to do it the old Soviet or Chinese way, when every item of the expense, has to be verified and found legitimate by, some kind of, I don't know, accountant over there, and only then it's reimbursed. It's a different story. Here they just throw this money, you know, like to help the guy, and if it helps him to become a good chess player, all the better. So here, remarkable move from So, Queen C2, while offering the exchange. I think Wesley was totally off in this game. If he thought, you know, he would get a safe king and no compensation with the two bishops, he was totally off base. Missed g3. That would not end well. Even in the endgame, maybe even more in the endgame, that's where... No, not king f2, what am I doing? You have to protect the pawn elsewhere. Somehow. Queen d3, yeah. King f2, knight e4 check. Now this. The g3 pawn falls, and now there is this. A knight to e4. It's totally lost for white. I mean, this game was not really a perfectly played game, but it's the effort from Leang and the struggles by So that made it remarkable. Here, Wesley, rook. You gotta keep the rook on f4. This attack is coming at you, king. He was hoping to win the pawn on d5. He won that pawn. Here he realized that if he does this and goes over there and then say, I don't know, queen h6. Black just builds up behind us, right? King to h8, rook doubled on the g file, and knight g4 comes any moment. You can't really defend bishop of... you just can't defend it anyhow. e3 is falling as well. So he took this way, and he already knew he was dropping material, but... nonetheless, he took on d5. No good practical decision, and, well, I would say that Avander almost blew it. I personally saw no fault in this. This is the first line that came to mind. Now, he cannot take on f3 because he'll be after the queen trade, losing the whole rook. What to do? You can only block, but he takes. No, queen takes, then there is check. And then there is check. Could there have been some kind of perpetual? Maybe, I don't think so. I don't see perpetual here. I think black is simply winning. Instead came queen f7, which is second best, but, well, anyway, the youngster won a piece and converted it in the endgame with some good technical play. Well, pretty sad way to finish this tournament for Wesley, so he has to, I suppose he has to sit down and try to figure out what's going on with his chess. It's going nowhere. Well, good for Leang. No, anyway, so I guess I've been going on for too long, you know. Well, there was this comment made a while ago that Jennifer was lucky and well, she wasn't really lost in any of her games. She was worse, maybe, I think, against Sabina Fleischer, but I would like to offer my opinion on all this. Well, I mean, you can't deny, you know, a player that scores 10 out of 11, but I mean, a general decline of American women's chess, you know, is there, right? I mean, okay, Jennifer made it, but I mean, others. Irina Krush is a shadow of herself, you know. That's what happens when you teach all the time. And Zatonsky just comes to the US from Germany, where he lives with her husband, Daniel Friedman, grandmaster, and 2 children. So she's not really an American player. And I mean, there is no wave of players. There's Jennifer, and then no, I say Carissa Ip, you know, played reasonable in Olympiad, and not Olympiad, World Team Championship, but all in all, like, I don't know, we need more. I think, I would take it back to the word decline, the stagnation. Stagnation is there. Decline only refers to Krosh and Zatonskих, but I guess it's inevitable. Now, this good development is the new tournament, the Karen's Cup, which took place earlier this year, and it was won by Russian Gunina. I think that, but I don't know how much can Rex Sinquefield do to single-handedly rescue American chess. And it refers to men as well as women. I mentioned this before, that our formula of tournaments, which is trying to attract a large pool of players, and then from there somehow have enough money to offer big prizes. I mean, the Bill Goldberg thing, I think it's run its course. I mean, people can do so much now from their home on the internet. Well, I don't know. Once again, we're coming back to this. Can chess be supported and whatever by some kind of some corporate support or whatnot? I don't know. I'm the wrong person to talk about this. Ask Garry Kasparov. He's been talking about this for as long as I remember. The problem with US chess today is the lack of Russian immigrants. There will be no Russian immigrants anymore. You can draw from this pool, Okay, fine. Look, we have no shortage of, like Europe has no shortage of immigrants from Libya or whatever. We have no shortage of immigrants from Iran, or, pardon me, Iraq or Syria. I guess that, we could get. No, somebody forgot to destroy Russia in the process, Then we would have many Russians coming over, but no, they won't come. Well, the one thing that I see very positive and generally in American chess is the emergence of collegiate chess. I think that's the ticket. That's the ticket. Somehow, the efforts of Susan Polgar and I welcome finally their mending of their ways with the US Chess Federation. Everything's good. And other chess programs and in other colleges. We really need a chess program in every school. Every Ivy League school and every big school everywhere in the country. Chess is an inexpensive sport, and generally speaking, you recruit, smart people. Even if they don't all become world champions, the chances are they will graduate. Tell this to people who run a football program. So, that I think is the ticket. Now, is there room for chess to exist in 21st century, and in what shape and form? I mean, I understand that chess.com's efforts to make it an online game and all that. It's a somewhat different thing. I'm not very happy with that. I really don't know. I really don't. But, no, hopefully we'll have 10 more ex-Sinquefields. And then, at least, we won't have any financial problems. Korchnoi in the Dutch Championship. Korchnoi played in the Dutch Championship. Yeah, I think at some moment, the Dutch, they were talking about giving him this refugee status or something. He ended up in Switzerland. I don't even remember what Korchnoi did, There was the time, it was a different century, different everything. Alright, guys, I guess, I bothered you. Not bothered. I didn't bother you. I bored you. I bored you enough with today's talk, like meandering, going from one thing to another. I don't know. I guess I'll sign off. Listen, the Gashimov Memorial is in full swing. We all know, of course, that Magnus Carlsen is leading the tournament already. Traditionally, he wins it every time he plays, 2.5 out of 3. Well, the gap is increasing between Carlsen and the rest of them. Is Magnus going to be 2,900? Well, we'll talk about this a week from now. Yes, Tuesday, April 9th. Take care, guys. Goodbye.